The courtroom had already been simmering with tension long before the letter surfaced, but when the judge's voice cut through the whispers, sharp, commanding, echoing against the heavy oak-paneled walls, everything froze. Reporters leaned in. Observers straightened in their seats. Even the air felt as if it were holding its breath. This wasn't a trial about finances or criminal wrongdoing. It was a reckoning, a public unspooling of the family that once claimed to be held together by faith, commitment, and a polygamous ideal. And now, the Browns stood in a courtroom confronting the truth behind the collapse of everything viewers had believed they represented. Kody Brown sat slumped at the defendant's table, smaller and more fragile than he appeared on television. The charisma that had carried him through years of TLC fame had evaporated. His cheeks were gaunt, his hair grayer, his shoulders drawn inward, as if he were folding into himself. He stared at a pile of documents he had no intention of reading. Across from him, Janelle sat tall, still, and composed, though her eyes betrayed a storm years in the making. Her daughter at her side mirrored her posture, head high, jaw set, ready for whatever might come next. Behind them, Robin Brown sat clutching a tissue so tightly that her knuckles were white. Her water bottle, half drained, trembled faintly in her hand. Her eyes darted back and forth between Kody and the judge, as though bracing for an impact that everyone else had already seen coming. Then the moment detonated. Janelle's attorney, a man with a calm yet piercing presence, rose from his seat. From a slim brown folder, he withdrew a single folded sheet of paper. It looked delicate, innocuous, yet he held it aloft with a weight that silenced even the back row. "Your Honor," he began, "the plaintiff requests this letter be admitted into evidence." The judge frowned, adjusting her glasses. "What is its significance?" The attorney's voice did not waver. "It is a handwritten letter signed by Robin Brown, dated to Mr. Kody Brown. We have authenticated it. This letter was never disclosed to any other wife, my client included. What is written here, Your Honor, is at minimum appalling. At maximum, instrumental in the collapse of the Brown family unit." A tremor ran through the gallery. Robin went rigid. Kody blanched, his lips tightening. Janelle, however, remained perfectly still. She had known. Somewhere deep inside, she had always sensed there was something unsaid, something withheld, something that explained the years of strain and unequal treatment. The judge exhaled slowly, then nodded. "Proceed." The attorney handled the letter as though it were fragile, ready to crumble. Its edges were yellow with age. The ink just faded enough to reveal it had been tucked away for years. The handwriting was unmistakably Robin's, soft loops, elegant curves, almost romantic. The attorney cleared his throat. And then he read, "Dear Kody," he began, "I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything is fine. I know you see it too. The way the others look at me with suspicion, resentment, sometimes outright hatred. I did try to love them. I swear I did. But I've accepted that I don't belong to them. I belong to you." A wave of discomfort rolled through the room. Even the judge shifted. "I'm tired," the attorney continued reading. "Tired of sacrificing our peace for their comfort. Tired of asking permission just to be near you. I don't want to be the villain in their story. But if that's what I am, maybe it's time to stop apologizing." Robin covered her face with both hands. Kody clenched his fists. Janelle's jaw tightened, yet she did not move. "You've told me again and again that I am your safe place," the letter went on. "That being with me is the only time you feel peace. So why are we pretending the rest of this still works? If it's me or them, please choose peace.
Please choose me.
Even if it means letting everything else go." A stunned silence overtook the courtroom. The letter was more than emotional venting, it was a crossroads. A plea. An ultimatum. A choice that had already been made long before the rest of the family ever knew they'd been placed on the scale. Janelle's attorney lowered the page. "Let the record show this letter was written 18 months before my client separated from Mr. Brown. Before the rupture. Before Garrison's passing. And clearly outlines Mrs. Brown's desire to separate Mr. Brown from the rest of the family." Kody reacted at last, his voice cracking as he blurted, "It was never meant to be found." Too late. The truth had escaped, echoing across the room. Janelle didn't flinch. Madison's eyes blazed with a fury her mother did not express aloud. The judge rapped the desk sharply. "Mr. Brown, you will speak only when addressed." Kody fell silent. Then, finally, the judge asked, "Does the plaintiff wish to respond?" Janelle rose slowly. She did not need notes. Her voice was firm, steady, and heavy with years of restrained truth. "This letter," she said, holding it with delicate disdain, "is proof of what I always knew." Kody made his choice long before he had the courage to admit it. And Robin, she didn't just want love. She wanted to be the last wife standing. Robin trembled, tears filling her eyes, but she said nothing. "You could have told us," Janelle continued, her gaze unwavering. "We were your sisters. We lived a shared life, a shared belief system. Instead, you hid letters and stood by while the family dissolved." The judge raised her hand. "That is enough for now. You will have your full statement in session 3. But the air was already thick with betrayal, the truth now exposed. The courtroom had changed. Something irreversible had surfaced. When Robin's turn came to speak, she rose on shaking legs, gripping a tissue and a copy of the letter. She looked neither at Kody nor at Janelle, only downward, as if the floor might somehow absorb the shame radiating off her. Her voice trembled, but remained intelligible. "I wrote this letter 2 years ago," she began. "I was overwhelmed, exhausted. I felt rejected by the other wives and cut out from the family. Kody had been away for days. I was alone, crying, confused. I wrote because I didn't know how else to survive." Kody raised his head, but Robin didn't look at him. "The words I used were selfish," she admitted. "I wrote from pain, not malice. I felt unloved. I felt isolated. I didn't understand then how deeply my closeness with Kody was hurting the others." She read from the letter, softly, painfully. "Kody, I know they'll never love me the way you do. I meant that as heartbreak, not insult. I didn't want to replace anyone. I didn't ask to be the favorite." Her voice cracked. "But he gave me more time, more attention, more loyalty. And by the time I realized how far things had gone, it was already too late." Janelle didn't move, yet her silence thundered. "To the children," Robin continued, "to Janelle's kids, I know I became someone you couldn't trust. I know you blamed me. And maybe I deserve some of that. Maybe all of it. But I wasn't trying to win anything. I was just trying not to lose everything." The judge nodded gently. "Please conclude, Mrs. Brown."
"I'm sorry," Robin whispered.
For the pain this letter caused. For the silence. For not stopping Kody when I saw what was happening. She sat back down with no applause, no comfort, only the crushing quiet of consequence. As the judge prepared to adjourn, Janelle suddenly rose. She didn't wait for permission. Her heels echoed throughout the room as she approached, standing not as a plaintiff, but as a woman who had finally reached the end of her patience. She looked directly at Kody. Her voice was low, but its softness carried an unmistakable blade. "I asked you for the truth," she said. "For years I begged you to be honest about why you left us. All I wanted was the truth. And instead, you hid this." She lifted the letter. "This," she said, "is why you left. Not schedules. Not religion. Not tension. This letter was the truth I deserved. Your loyalty to one woman over your commitment to your family." She turned to Robin next. "You didn't destroy the family.
Kody did.
But you enabled it. Whether you meant to or not, you stood by while everything fell apart. You watched us break." Robin sobbed openly, but Janelle continued, unfazed. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to watch your children cry on Christmas because their father didn't call? Or to fake excuses on birthdays to protect them from the truth, that you moved on? That we weren't part of your world anymore?" Her voice broke just once. She let it crack without shame. "I defended you, Kody," she said. "For years. I lied for you. I made excuses because I thought the man who once held our babies might come back to us. She looked down at the letter again. But now it's clear. You didn't end the family like a man. You let it die quietly, one ignored call at a time. She lifted a laminated copy of Garrison's last message. Her hands trembled, not with weakness, but with the ache of memory. Dad, we miss you, she read. But you only show up when it's convenient. I won't beg anymore. I just want peace for Mom and the rest of us. The room fell ice cold. Faces in the gallery tightened. Even the judge swallowed hard. I'm not here for money, Janelle said. I'm here because my children were abandoned. Their truth was buried while their father played house with his favorite wife and told the world we were dramatic and unreasonable. She gestured toward her sons in the back. Tears streamed down one boy's face. These boys grew up thinking they weren't good enough, she said softly. Thinking they did something wrong. When the truth was simple, he chose someone else. And with that, she returned to her seat. The courtroom had no breath left to give. The truth, long hidden in drawers and whispered in shadows, had finally been dragged into the light. And nothing in the Brown family would ever look the same again. When the courtroom reconvened for session 3, the energy was palpably different. The earlier tension had hardened into something sharper, an emotional blade suspended in the air. The gallery filled again, but voices were hushed. Even the clicking of cameras outside seemed muted, subdued by the weight of what had been revealed. The bailiff called for order and people hurried to their seats. The judge entered with a face that suggested she, too, had not quite shaken off the impact of the morning's revelations. Kody returned to his place looking even more worn. The hour recess had not softened him. It had drained him. His shoulders sagged, his eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, and the way he avoided looking anywhere near Janelle or Robin made it clear he was holding himself together only by a thread. Robin's eyes were red, swollen from crying, and though she tried to maintain composure, her trembling hands betrayed the ongoing storm inside her. Janelle, however, walked in with quiet strength, a steadiness that seemed to ripple outward. Her sons followed, solemn, protective, and visibly bracing themselves for what their mother would say next. The judge cleared her throat. Session 3 will now resume. Mrs. Janelle Brown, you may proceed with your full statement. Janelle stood without hesitation. She did not arrange papers or look toward her attorney for guidance. She simply walked forward as though she had been preparing for this moment for years. And in many ways, she had. Your Honor, she began, her voice even, what you've heard today isn't merely about a letter. It's about decades of choices, some spoken, some hidden, many denied. It's about a pattern of behavior that left my children and many others in this family carrying wounds they didn't deserve. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. When Kody chose to keep that letter from us, he didn't simply choose Robin. He chose secrecy. He chose to let the rest of us believe we were failing while he was quietly planning a life with one wife at the cost of all the others. Kody finally looked up, but only barely. I want to be clear, Janelle continued, that I am not here out of spite. I am not seeking revenge. I am here because I refuse to let the narrative of this family be written with lies. For too long, people assumed we were bitter or unreasonable. For too long, we were portrayed as jealous or unstable. But the truth is that we were left in the dark. We were judged on behaviors triggered by abandonment. She glanced briefly at her sons, then at Robin. And it wasn't just emotional distance. It was physical. It was financial. It was spiritual. Kody stopped being a father long before he stopped being a husband. Our children deserved his time, his affection, his honesty. Instead, they got excuses. Her tone didn't rise, but each word landed with precision. While he built a new world with Robin, we were expected to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. I was expected to cover for him. I was expected to lie to protect the man who wouldn't protect his own children from heartbreak. I let that continue for far too long. Robin's eyes shimmered again. She clutched her tissue tightly, but remained silent. Your Honor, Janelle said, turning back toward the bench, This case isn't just about a family falling apart. Families fall apart every day. But what makes this different is that we lived under a structure, a belief system that was supposed to unite us. A system designed around fairness, around shared responsibility, around open communication. Her voice deepened. Yet the moment Robin came into our family, things shifted. Not because she intended to cause harm, but because Kody made choices that were never discussed with the rest of us. He began offering her more time, more attention, more decisions. At first, we tried to be understanding. We thought it was new love or adjustment. But slowly, it became clear we were being replaced. Kody flinched. A small movement, but noticeable. And when the pandemic arrived, Janelle said, he used it as a wall. He hid behind rules he did not apply equally. He created distance not for safety, but for convenience. He visited one household faithfully and left the others waiting, wondering, hoping. Her voice tightened with restrained pain. My children begged to see their father. They begged for fairness. They begged for clarity. Instead, they received ultimatums, lectures, and, at times, outright rejection. Yet the entire world was told that they were rebellious, ungrateful, disrespectful, even though all they ever wanted was their dad. She stepped closer to the judge's bench, stopping just short of crossing the allowed boundary. This letter, she said, lifting it again, was the final confirmation of something we sensed all along. Kody didn't drift away. He didn't lose balance.
He didn't get overwhelmed. He chose.
He made Robin his priority, emotionally and spiritually, long before he was willing to admit it. And in doing so, he left the rest of us living in confusion, wondering why we were good enough to hold the family together, but never good enough to be held onto. A tear slipped from the corner of her eye. She let it fall. My children suffered. They internalized the blame. They questioned their value. They asked me if they were burdens. They asked why their father didn't want them. And I did everything in my power to protect them from the truth, even when that truth was sitting in a drawer next to Kody's bed. The courtroom was still, heavy with the ache of shared understanding. Your Honor, I am not here to strip him of dignity. I'm here to restore dignity to my children. I'm here to place on record that their pain was not caused by teenage rebellion or by wives stirring trouble. It was caused by neglect. It was caused by favoritism. It was caused by silence. She lowered the letter at last. I am seeking closure. I am seeking accountability, not punishment. She took a final breath. My children deserve to move forward knowing that the truth was spoken, that their feelings were valid, that they were not abandoned because they were flawed, but because their father made a choice, one he was too afraid to admit until now. She stepped back. Thank you. She returned to her seat. Neither Robin nor Kody dared look at her. The judge exhaled slowly, visibly moved. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. We will take a brief 10-minute recess before hearing from Mr. Brown. The gavel struck. This time, the room didn't erupt with motion. People stood slowly, carefully, as though afraid to disturb the raw honesty still lingering in the air. Robin remained seated, her face buried in her hands. Kody stayed frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes unfocused, as if he were staring into the ruins of a life he once thought he controlled. And somewhere between them, Janelle sat with her children surrounding her like armor. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply breathed, steady and whole, as though, for the first time in years, the truth had finally given her the room to exist without apology. The next session would belong to Kody. And the entire courtroom knew that whatever he said next would determine whether he salvaged even a shred of redemption, or watched the last of his legacy collapse in front of everyone. Janelle turned back to Kody one last time, her voice no longer shaking but steady with the weight of years. But today, I'm done protecting you, she said quietly, yet each word struck with the heaviness of truth. You don't get to rewrite history anymore. You don't get to say we left you. You left us. Her gaze shifted once toward Robin, whose face had collapsed into trembling sorrow. And Robin, I hope someday you realize what that silence cost. Not just me, not just our kids, but you too. Robin sat trembling, crying into the shoulder of her attorney, silently unraveling as if each sentence landed like a stone dropped into her chest. Kody still hadn't spoken. He hadn't even lifted his head. Janelle stepped back, nodded respectfully to the judge, and returned to her seat. The air no longer vibrated with volatility. Instead, a thick melancholy settled across the courtroom, quiet, sober, almost sacred. The truth had been spoken, not shouted, not hurled, but delivered with the clarity only possible after years of swallowing words that had nowhere else to go. The judge cleared her throat gently, as though careful not to fracture the delicate stillness. "Thank you, Miss Brown," she said softly. "We will move to the next testimony." A brief recess followed. When the gavel fell again, this time soft, deliberate, Janelle allowed the faintest smile to appear. Not a victorious one, not triumphant, but the kind of fragile smile that emerges only after finally releasing the weight of everything unsaid. A prolonged silence followed as she took her seat, longer than any silence that had lingered in that room before. No one shifted. No one coughed. Even the air resisted movement, as though waiting for the next truth to surface. Then Kody Brown rose. For the first time in all the proceedings, he looked visibly shaken. Not furious, not defensive, just hollowed out and exhausted. He approached the stand alone, without notes, without his attorney's prompting, without excuses. He stood like a man who had carried too many secrets, who had barricaded himself behind walls that had finally given out. And then he spoke. "I failed." The single phrase dropped into the silence, like a heavy stone. Some in the gallery gasped softly. Kody looked at the judge, then at Janelle, and after a long, excruciating pause at Robin. "I failed as a husband, as a father, as a man." Robin looked up mid-sob, stunned by the confession. But Kody wasn't seeking sympathy. He wasn't trying to reshape a narrative. He was simply unraveling. "When we began this family," he continued, voice wavering, "I believed there was something greater. I believed we could do it differently. I believed in the plural marriage dream. I believed in love and faith and sacrifice." He paused, struggling for words he'd avoided for years. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot why we were a family." He looked down at his hands, trembling. "I started seeing conflict instead of communication, problems instead of people. I stopped trying. I was exhausted. There was a fire in every house, someone always needing something I didn't know how to give anymore. And instead of dealing with it, I recoiled. I hid." He turned toward Robin, his voice fracturing. "And Robin gave me peace. I held on to that peace like a lifeline."
There it was, spoken plainly at last. No justifications. No spiritual framing.
Just the truth. He shifted his gaze to Janelle, eyes bloodshot and raw. "I didn't mean to leave you, or the kids. I just lost track of how to make things right. And instead of trying harder, I just left. I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, the problems would disappear. That the yelling would stop. That someone else would fix it." He exhaled shakily. "I was wrong." Kody swallowed, looking away. "I let the letter sit in a drawer for almost 2 years. I read it once and knew if anyone else saw it, it would all be over. That one letter said everything I was too much of a coward to say." He looked back at Robin. "And you didn't make me do anything. You were just the only person I didn't feel judged by anymore. I felt enough in your house. I'm sorry that made you a target. But I see now what it made the others feel." His voice broke. Abandoned. Because they were. He ran his hands over his face, cracking under the weight of his own admission. "I told myself I was choosing peace. But really, I was fleeing. From conversations, responsibilities, problems I helped create. I pulled our family so thin it finally snapped." Janelle remained still, unreadable, but tears hovered in her eyes. Then Kody inhaled sharply, as though bracing himself against an invisible blow. "Garrison's death," his voice collapsed. A tremor ran through him. "Garrison's death shattered something in me. Something I can't mend. I wasn't there when he needed me. He reached for me and I didn't reach back. I can't make that okay." He faced Janelle again, tears streaming freely. You were right. He did give up. And I encouraged him to lose hope. Not with what I said, but with everything I didn't say. The courtroom was utterly still. Even the judge had leaned forward, hands pressed together, listening not as an authority, but as someone witnessing a man dismantle himself. Kody wiped his eyes and took a shaky breath. I quit going to Christmas because I couldn't handle the disappointment. I quit calling because I was tired of feeling like I was losing. But now I understand the real loss was your trust, your respect, your love. He gestured vaguely at the empty space beside him, the space where 4 wives once stood. I thought I could love everyone equally. I thought my heart could stretch that far. But little by little I gave more to Robin. Not because she asked, but because I allowed it. Robin covered her mouth again, trembling. And the worst part, he whispered, I knew you all saw it. I knew you knew. And I still didn't stop. He looked at the judge, eyes dim. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know my kids may never speak to me again. I accept that. But I want to be honest now, even if it's too late. Keeping it secret didn't keep anyone safe. It ruined everything. He lowered his head. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. This wasn't testimony anymore. It was confession. Finally, the judge broke the silence. Mr. Brown, do you have anything else to say? He lifted his head, voice barely there.
Just this.
If you're building a family and it feels like you're constantly choosing who to disappoint, stop. Tell the truth before it rots you from the inside. His breath caught. I didn't. And this is the price. He sat, utterly undone. The silence that followed was different. Not shocked. Recognizing. It was the kind of silence that settles over a room when something long denied has finally been spoken aloud. The judge lifted her gavel. 5 sessions, filled with sobs, accusations, revelations, were coming to a close. When the gavel dropped this final time, something irreversible would fall with it. She read the ruling, voice steady but not unkind. Regarding property and community assets, the court declared there was sufficient evidence to divide all remaining assets, financial, real estate, and otherwise, equally among Janelle, Christine, Mary, and Robin Brown. Each had contributed years of unpaid labor, emotional caregiving, and domestic work. The court recognized their equal claim. No one reacted. Equity did not feel like victory. The judge continued. For minor dependents, Mrs. Robin Brown will retain sole legal and physical custody. Mr. Brown's visitation shall be supervised pending emotional therapy, parental counseling, and further assessments. A quiet tear slipped down Robin's cheek. Kody did not move. Then came the ruling that carved deeper than the rest. For adult children shared between Mr. Brown and Ms. Janelle Brown, autonomy is granted. Any relationship or contact shall be at the children's discretion only. Mr. Brown shall not initiate contact without written consent. Janelle did not blink, but her pain surfaced in the tightness around her mouth. Kody lowered his head. With a final rap of the gavel, crisp and final, the judge declared, "Court is adjourned." The courtroom stirred, but slowly, more like the quiet dispersal after a funeral than the end of a trial. As the doors opened, journalists erupted outside. Robin, thoughts on the ruling? Janelle, do you blame Kody for your son's death? Mr. Brown, will you fight for custody? But their expressions had already answered. Robin exited first, guided by her attorney and a court officer. She kept her head low, her steps fast, her face streaked with tears. For years she had been called the favorite, the destroyer, the chosen one. Now she was the sole remaining wife, and still appeared more alone than ever. Someone called. "Do you feel guilty, Robin?" She flinched but didn't stop. She slipped into her SUV, without a word. Janelle followed next, not rushing, not hiding. She walked steadily, her adult children flanking her like silent guardians. When a reporter gently asked, "Ms. Brown, what's your message for your family after today?" Janelle paused long enough to respond with calm clarity. "He didn't break us. He just showed us who he really was." Then she continued onward, unbroken, unapologetic, and finally free. Kody did not join them. He remained seated long after the courtroom emptied, the letter clenched in his hand, the paper wrinkled where his grip had tightened.